Hello, sculptors and makers. This is Diane van der Zanden here at Atelier Arenas in Colima, Mexico. Today, we're going to work on the second part of the piece called the skirt. So this is the second video in that series. Here you can see I'm working on a mold well in plasticine. This is the way that I like to work. It's easier for me to get the plaster in one shot, and plaster is a wonderful material that hardens fairly rapidly, and you can put layers and layers of plaster on to build up the piece. But that's not what I like to do. I like to have more flexibility. So there are always obstacles in the studio. It's really dusty here in the subtropics and in Mexico. Either it's rain and mud or dust and sun, and so I cover pieces with plastic. I left the studio without covering the skirt. Somebody came up to work on the roof, and a whole bunch of debris came down onto the plasticine skirt. I had to re-smooth the skirt. It's fine, things like that. And then plaster sometimes doesn't cure, and then things sometimes don't come out of the molds. And so sculpture comes with its challenges. The two most important things that you have to remember about using plaster. The one most important thing is do not clean your plaster in your sink. Do not wash plaster down your pipes. You will end up having to call a plumber. Oh, now the dogs are barking at the sugarcane trucks using their Jake brakes. The second most important thing is to make sure that you use mold release. Right here, what I'm doing is using half mineral oil and half Vaseline in order to make sure that it separates. It's my mold release in this case. And I smooth it down with my hand because the plaster will actually make a mold of the lines of the paintbrush and the Vaseline if it's not smoothed down. I use the Michelangelo method of mixing plaster, which means that you use a bucket, not more than half full of water, fill it slowly with plaster without introducing bubbles until there's a hill in the center, a decent sized hill in the center, a little bit bigger actually than what shows in this video. Then you don't touch it until that hill goes down below the water level. So the water has completely absorbed into the plaster. And then what happens is when you put your hand in and gently stir it, there won't be any lumps and there will be way fewer bubbles. So then you just stir it and stir it. I stir it with my hand. Sometimes I stir it with a brush. I think it takes at least 2 minutes usually to let that hill of plaster sink down into the water. And then it takes a couple of minutes of stirring to get it completely smooth and consistent. Daniela is going to come and help me mix plaster. I used to mix big batches of plaster like this by myself, but it's much easier to have the help of another person. So we make batch after batch until I get the plaster to be 1 inch or 1.5 inches thick. If you're working with smaller pieces, the pieces can be a little thinner. If you're working with bigger pieces, maybe they need to be a little thicker. The mold is really ready to have all the pieces come off of it. The sun is bright, and so all of this stuff can come off easily. And here I'm taking the plasticine out of the mold, which I'm really struggling with doing. Oftentimes I can sit the mold in the sun with the plasticine in it, and the plasticine will get warm enough for me to just be able to grab it and take it out. But in this case, I couldn't. So I went and got a piece of pipe and I stuck that around my threaded rod, which I was using to make the sculpture in the first place. And I just stuck it in there and pulled on the rod and was able to pull the thing out. remind me never to use bead foam again. Bead foam is such a pain in the tush. What I found also is that these kind of long mold pieces made out of plaster can warp. And so usually I strap them with mold straps. And in the US, in the North, I would use inner tube material or something like that. But inner tube material just mounts here in the heat. So for the moment, I'm taping the two pieces together with masking tape. I'm sorry about this terrible videography here. I bought a new camera and I'm trying to figure out how to use it. But what I'm showing here is putting on the mold soap and just layer after layer of mold soap until I get to 10 layers on this mold. And these legs are the next in the lineup for mold making, so stay tuned. Here's the mold, all done, all dry, all released with its 10 layers of paper inside. Anyway, this is, I think, the end of this video. I'm sure that there's something else that you want to know when you're doing this. Definitely leave me comments. I'm answering all the comments that I'm getting right now. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe. Thanks. I really appreciate you.